now we step into probably the most well-known disconnection or facts about the authorship of the Bible, and those are the Gospels. The Gospels, well, there was 12 disciples, right? And so there's only 4 Gospels in the New Testament, or in the book. So you have to wonder, where are the other 8, and where did they go? Well, we found them. They're in the Nag Hammadi texts. And you can go read the Gospel of Thomas, you can go read the Gospel of Mary, you can go read Philip, and so on and so on. But for all intensive purposes, the 4 main Gospels are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And the interesting thing here is that these are not written as eyewitness accounts. When you read them, if you read them, you can tell that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they never actually say that they met Jesus or that they were in his presence. And most of these Gospels were written at least 70 years after Christ died. So it would be pretty much impossible for those people to have lived with Christ and then 70 years wrote it down, because people didn't live that long. And then on top of that, it's pretty well documented that only 1 or 2, if at all, of the 12 disciples could actually read or write. So they did the same thing. They had oral stories that were handed down to many people over a long period of time. And then eventually the clergy or scribes wrote them down. So it's a sort of oral tradition that definitely has the potential to get lost in translation, especially over the course of many years. And we also know that these stories weren't put into one codex or one canonized version until roughly 320 years after the death of Christ. So you have 320 years of oral tradition before it's ever written down or canonized into one book. So for example, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they all have different perspectives of Jesus and of the story. Like for example, Matthew, there's no manger. When it talks about Christ's birth, it doesn't say anything about a manger or where he was born. It just says he's born, and that's it. And then it goes on, like, for example, Luke has no star in the east, which would be heralding his birth. However, Matthew does. And Mark has no birth story at all. So Mark's account of Jesus just starts when Jesus is a young boy and begins to learn about his ministry. So it doesn't talk about the birth at all. So they come from totally different perspectives. The reason why is because they never met him. They're just finally getting their own translations put down in words. And most likely it wasn't even done by them themselves. So they're just not eyewitness accounts.